Thanks for joining us today on a nice sunny day here at Sunnyside Nursery. I'm Trevor Cameron, our general manager. We got a little class going on ornamental grasses, a little bit of fall perennials in there too, so it should be a good class today. Say hi to Ben. He's in the background there on the green screen.
Hello, everyone.
And we have a special guest back in my house again today, Mr. Smith, the whistling gardener, will be answering your questions on the chat as well. So say hi to Steve as well. He's in the office there. But the grass class is always a fun one for me. We carry a huge selection of ornamental grasses here at Sunnyside. I use quite a bit in my own landscape. We have a lot here on the property that we've used in the landscape. Really easy plants to grow. You know, to me, grasses, you know, create motion, they create sound. We can go small, we can go tall. You know, we can really pick a grass for just about every spot in the yard. Pretty low maintenance plants and perfect for our Pacific Northwest gardens here. You know, always keep an eye on sun versus shade. You know, we can make it pretty easy for our customers here and have a large outdoor sun area and a covered area for shade. And we try to keep grasses kind of where they belong. Certainly some talk about we'll do both, a little sun, a little shade. But there's some that we would want to have out in pretty much full sun. Others we want to protect from hot afternoon sun at all times. And then again, some of them will do a little bit of both. Certainly if we talk planting grasses, nothing changes with all the rest of the classes I teach here. We want to have good soil. Most of them will need good drainage, although some we'll talk about take a little more wet. But we want to dig a nice sized hole, twice as wide, twice as deep, get some compost. Mix that 1/3 with our native dirt. There's a nice mixture in the hole. Feed them with a good organic transplanter like Sure Start, and off we go. You know, it's a great time to plant in the fall. We start to have some rain coming along here. We can get a lot of these plants, including grasses, established over the winter here. That much far ahead of the game come springtime when the garden wakes up once again for 2022. If we talk fertilizing, you know, grasses don't need a whole lot. You know, a little bit of nitrogen, certainly a good little well-balanced organic fertilizer is fine. You could really put just about anything on a grass, but, you know, for me, if something maybe struggled, the color is a little off, you know, maybe we feed that right coming out of winter, like first part of March, maybe a second dose as we get towards late May, early June for early summer. We'll have a nice flush over the summer. But if you've got healthy soil, you do a little bit of watering in the summer months, you're going to have happy, healthy looking grasses. So not a huge amount of fertilizer needed. You can always divide. You know, we'll talk today about some grasses that are more clumping and other ones that will naturalize, you know, maybe and spread a little bit if you're looking more for a ground cover look. But certainly clumping grasses and spreading ones can easily be divided in the dormant season. We could take a shovel, cleave a clump in half, have a free plant to use somewhere else, reduce the size. A very easy thing to divide and transplant as well. Now, if we talk pruning, because this is a big one with grasses, we'll always mention this again when I teach the fall pruning class here when we get into October, November. But grasses are pretty easy. If I grab a couple here, I'll just show you. If we have an evergreen type grass, this is a Carex, one called Sheen. Got nice yellow blades, a little crumpy growth, doesn't get big. If I want to prune this, I want to do it right coming out of winter, usually about the 1st of April. If I'm going to prune it back, I'm going to grab it like a big clump of hair, and I could prune that off maybe 3 or 4 inches above the soil and let it rejuvenate or start over again. This is not going to do me any good. I see a lot of people in my neighborhood and around driving that go along and scissor brown tips off. I'm just going to have another brown tip. So if you're truly going to let your evergreen grass start over again, coming out of winter, we want to cut the entire thing back. I would definitely throw some food on it in that case, and then off we go again as we get into spring. Brand new foliage, much happier looking plant. You know, typically evergreen ones, if you want my opinion, I use a lot of these in pots and in my own landscape. It's about every 3 years. I don't know that it's something you have to do every season, but certainly do it every few years. You'll have a fresh looking plant and let them start over again. If we have a perennial grass that truly turns color in the fall, goes dormant, and then we start brand new with green growth in 2022, this is a calamagrasis, a feather reed grass, a little bit taller. Now, as this turns color and plumes and does its thing here in the fall, I've got options from, say, November all the way up till the 1st of March. So in my own yard, I use a lot of perennial tall grasses, a couple even up 8 feet. So I like the structure, the motion, the frost on them. I'm not interested in cutting them all off in the fall. You can, but as long as I get these cut back by the 1st of March next spring, I don't have green coming up into my old growth. And now I've got a tougher time pruning. So if you always kind of mark your calendar, I'd say March 1st is the drop dead date. I can walk out, prune this with my hand pruners, lay my hedge clippers on the ground, snip that off just an inch or two out of the soil, and up comes new green, and we start over again with a brand new grass for the next season, okay? So in essence, those are your 2 pruning, whether we do evergreen or we have a perennial type grass. Those are a very easy way to do either one. Now, I always mention grasses in containers. In a couple of weeks, I'll be teaching the fall container class, and we'll utilize a lot of fun grasses when we talk fall containers. If I have a container and shade or sun, I pick the right one, but we can pick a lot of really nice little low evergreen grasses, even some perennial ones that will add, again, some seasonal interest, some motion, some plumes in the fall, some color in the winter. You saw me pull up that Carex. You know, this is a gallon-sized plant, but we have these in little 4-inch pots. This would be a great little addition to the edge of a pot to kind of hang out, create some interest, trail a little bit, and have some nice color all the way through the winter. So don't forget grasses in containers as well. Now, you've heard me mention a couple times, clump versus naturalizing so far, kind of how these grow. The majority of all the grasses we talk about today, I plant one on the ground. Yes, my clump will get larger as I mature, but I'm not going to run and pop up another grass over here and over there. So a clumping one will kind of stay clumped, maybe a little tidier, sometimes short, but there are very tall ones as well. That would be one option. If I want to naturalize, let's say I have a large area that I'd like to cover up with some grassy foliage and some texture and some color, I can plant other grasses where I plant one that will actually run with the root system and give me more blades and naturalize to fill up a little bit a larger area. I can always get a shovel, say no more, slow it down, chop some off. But those are your 2 types to me. If you wanted to have something a little tidier and clumping, or we would get something that's a little more naturalized, okay? Now, before we start showing you some grasses, because I brought a bunch in here, I wanted to make sure everybody had the handout. I've got a copy here. It's way too long as usual, but you can get it on the website. Let us know. We can email it to you. It'll go through some basics on grasses. I added a list with a few descriptions, lots of cultivars on there, and then some fall perennials we'll talk about at the end as well. So keep an eye for the handout. That's a good one to kind of reference back to. Now, if we follow that handout, we'll kind of stay in the same order as I got going on there to keep things simple. But I'll just show you quite a few here, some grasses that I might consider using in my landscape. So if we start at the beginning, this is what we call a chorus or sweet flag. You can see a little bit shorter. This is a variety called Ogon, O-G-O-N. In Japanese, that just simply means gold. This is a golden sweet flag. We can find it with cream leaves. We can find little miniature dwarf ones. Sweet flag's an evergreen grass that does clump, but will spread a little bit. The coolest thing with sweet flag is this will take some wet. So maybe I've got an area that's a little boggier. We've had some people even use this as a marginal bog kind of pond plant, but a chorus or sweet flag will take a little bit of moisture, a little bit heavier soil, with something I can plant in and again allow to naturalize kind of very slowly and have some low color. So that's a chorus or sweet flag. If we jump up to the next one there, the andropogon, this is big bluestem. Now this is a tall grass. This is one, to me, I would use as a big clump specimen, maybe a group of 3 to give me some verticality. This is one we'll get a good 4 to 5 feet of foliage and then our tall plumes on that in the fall. The coolest thing with this is of andropogon or big bluestem is probably the color. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but if I look through here right now, I've already started to get purple coming through. So this is the one as we get into August, I'll have green as my base color on a nice big tall grower, but I start to see that fall color come in August and intensify as we go through the fall. So really nice height, really nice tall plume on this one. Just so you know, this is a variety called Blackhawks. This is a little darker one. We've got other ones out there as well, but that big Bluestem or Andropogon will give you a little bit of height. There's a nice perennial type. That's one, again, if you remember our pruning, that we would cut back either late in the fall when we're done for the season, or wait and do that in March and allow that structure for the winter time, okay? One on there you'll see is the Butelia. We ran out of those. You can look one picture up online. That's a cool little kind of small clumping grass that's perennial. The difference with that one is probably prairie style. So a little bit hot, little drought tolerant. That one gets a really unusual little golden yellow flag. So the seed head is horizontal, not vertical. It's kind of a fun little grass if you want to give that one a try. Feather reed grass is the next one on there, calamagrasis. And I brought just a couple in. This is one I have in my yard. You know, if you live in Everett, locally here, and you know the new YMCA is just a little bit south of me in my neighborhood, they have used hundreds of these in mass planting, and they look spectacular now. Very easy maintenance, don't need a lot of water, but it makes a beautiful kind of native looking presentation with grasses when they're planted in masses. So they have this one called Carl Forrester. We get about 2, maybe 3 feet tall here in the fall with a nice crisp green color. We get the little seed head on there for interest in the fall. This is one that we would just whack off and enjoy again as a perennial for the coming season. You know, I don't know that sometimes one is okay, but this is one that, again, maybe I'd want to plant in a little bit of a mass or a grouping to make a really nice presentation. But calamagrasis or feather reed grass, the green one here is Carl Forster. And you can also find some really fun variegated ones. This is what I have in my yard. This is one you'll see some white and a little bit of pink come through in the fall. This is a newer one called Lightning Strike, but we've got Overdam, we've got some other older varieties of variegated calamagrasis. Instead, maybe I don't want green, but I'd like a little bit of color on the blades for a little bit of variegation. So that's a nice choice as well, okay? Now, a larger group of grasses is that next one. You'll see carex on there, the sedges. There's all kinds of sedges around Washington. We've got a zillion native ones. We don't usually carry the native stuff. We can find those down on the roadside, but we've got a lot of good ornamental ones if you like some color. Carex will give you great variegation, short height, moundy growth habit, and almost all of them are evergreen. I'm going to show you the one perennial type here first that'll get a little bit taller. We have a nice, Steve planted some of these at the nursery landscape. It looks beautiful here. I have this in a giant pot on my shady patio. This is a variety called Bowles Golden, and this is a perennial type sedge. So this will go brown in the winter. I chop this off, and then I'll see you again next spring. I've had mine for years in a container. Nice liney yellow, bright color, brightens up my shady porch a little bit. I can still do some flowers around it. Looks awful nice. Now this one will get a little taller. I might end up in that 2 to 3 foot range on a perennial type carex like Bowles Golden, again, that I'm going to cut back and let's start over again for next year. This one produces its seed head in spring, so very attractive, really cool little seeds come out. Then the grass starts out in springtime, and then off we go for the season. So that's a perennial type. All of the rest of these are going to be evergreen. So these are ones that we would keep through the winter and have foliage on that are clumping in style, and we can use some for sun, some for shade. There's a lot of varieties of carex out there, so this certainly isn't all of them, but just a few to kind of give you a feel. This is one of these new evercolor grasses. This one's called Everest. So if I like the white with the green, that's a nice little clumper that'll stay tidy and mounded, that I would have the white and green variegation. If I like gold, you saw that sheen I brought out earlier. I love yellow, so this would be my choice, but it's your garden, not mine. So sheen would give me a really nice yellow on green look on a short little clumper. And then maybe if I have a little bit more shade, This one's called everlime. And if you look at those blades real close, I've got more of a lime color with a little lime variegation on the outside. Again, same growth habit, but great color depending on what your taste is. All three of those would be excellent little choices for the garden or for containers. And then we have something like Feather Fall. So this is one we use a lot in containers here. A little bit thicker blade, a little bit longer blade. This is one that looks really nice in pots, kind of cascading over the edge a little bit. Again, evergreen, a little bit more bold, a little bit heavier variegation than some of the other ones we looked at, but still that same nice growth habit. The last one is one of my favorite grasses of all. I use these all over the place. Pretty much every pot I ever plant has a New Zealand sedge in it because I'm stuck in a rut, but this is New Zealand sedge or Carex testacea. Some people call it orange sedge, New Zealand sedge. The biggest thing is the color. You can see that I've got kind of that orangey, bronzy lime color. Again, short growth habit, maybe a foot tall, foot wide, nice little clumping, great in containers. This is one that once it gets established, you know, pretty drought tolerant too. I use these out on some of my banks for a little bit of accent color here and there. But if you haven't tried them, I think this is a great little choice. Maybe you're like me, I always put them in pots. I redo the container, go find a spot in the yard to add some more of the orange sedge for some color. So check those out. Now, all those Carex, you know, sometimes that first one we showed you, that Bowles Golden, the perennial one, you know, maybe that's a single specimen. We certainly could plant 3 of those or a mass of those. It would look awesome too, but maybe that's a little bigger for a nice accent or for a single specimen. Some of the other ones, you know, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5, maybe it's planting a whole border. You can certainly utilize those in mass as well to make a nice presentation for something that's evergreen, okay? Now, the next one I'll show you is a fun one with a little seed head. This is Chasmanthium. We call northern sea oats. This would be native up in the upper Midwest. You can just see the first little oat seeds coming out. You can see them kind of flickering against my vest there if I hold it just right. But this one's got a really pretty plume. This is another one I have in my yard. I like the lime green color, not super tall, just about 2 foot of foliage. This one will take some shade. It takes some wet. If you put it out in sun, it'll grow fine, but we have to water this one maybe a little bit more. If you've got an area that's maybe a little bit more wet, this would be ideal for northern sea oats. But again, a good perennial grass with a really attractive seed head on it in the fall that I can use year after year after year as a nice garden plant up here. So that again is the Chasmanthium or the northern sea oats. If we bring up a couple big boys here next. So this is pampas grass. I'm always brutally honest, this is not one of my favorites, but they are popular. A lot of people like pampas grass. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll borrow the tag here and put it up to the screen. And you can see those massive feather duster plumes. This is the one, if you're driving around here in the fall, you will see a massive stalk with that huge old school feather duster plume on them. Whites, you can also find light pink ones if you look around. But pampas grass is a big plant. This is not one we're going to tuck in a little 2-foot spot in our garden. We want to give this some room to grow. You know, get an old pampas grass, you're probably going to be up there 6 foot by 6 foot. They are evergreen unless we get a brutal winter. But this is one that gets so thick, it's a little sharper on the blade. Be real careful. You almost get a sawzall or a chainsaw to zip that guy off in the springtime if you're going to start it over again. So look at pampas grass if you've need a big specimen. This is one you'd probably see on the postcard from South Carolina on the beach, where you'd see the big clumps of pampas grass that are growing on the dunes kind of thing. So pretty flower, but it is a pretty big grass. This is the dwarf one, which don't think it's a little tiny dwarf one. It's a little bit smaller, but still a good 3 or 4 feet tall. Regular pampas grass, we carry ivory feathers, which will get me up there in that 5 or 6 foot range. And then we've got, if you want to add a little interest, you've got something like sunstripe. This is one you can see the yellow one there. That would be variegated pampas grass with that same big feather duster plume, okay? So there's a little cortaderia or pampas grass. Now, Deschampsia is a fun little colorful grass. This is a little smaller. You can see the colors on that. I've got some pink, I've got some cream, I've got some green. Nice little short habit. This is one only gets maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall with the little plumes on it here in the fall. But this is one very hardy, pretty good drought tolerance once this one's established. And one, again, great one for containers for the season, or one that I would use in mass. You know, if I'm going to look at planting this Deschampsia in my yard, I'm probably going to get 3 or 5 and make a nice little swath of them so I get a little better presentation. But this is a good perennial one with some nice variegation during the growing season as well. Okay. So who's up next here? With Festuca. Some pesky customer cleaned us out of all of our fescue this week. So we'll have a little fescue next week. But if you know blue fescue, that would be native over eastern Washington, Idaho, Montana. Very short, very steely blue color. That's one, if we've got heat, we want drought tolerance, we want something evergreen, fescue is a really good choice. I've used that on my bank over the years off and on for something for the color that doesn't get very tall. So look at some of those blue fescues as an option for drought tolerance, short, and being evergreen. That's one that would take a whole lot of sun and grow fairly well. Hakanakloa is a really tough one to say. You can call it Japanese forest grass. That might be a little easier. But Hakanakloa is one that will naturalize. I want to make sure we buy this plant, and I want to make sure everybody knows, you know, this looks like a nice little clump in a pot. But if I plant this, I love the fact that it spreads and fills up an area. This is one that loves shade or morning sun. We don't want to have all day sun usually on Japanese forest grass, but I can get really nice seasonal color. This is a perennial, so it'll turn bright reds, bright pinks in the fall, drop our leaves. We rake it up one time in the fall and we see it again come springtime. But if you want something that maybe covers some area underneath an old evergreen tree, in the shade garden, kind of a ground cover, but not really a ground cover, this is one that we could add a number of Hakanakloas or Japanese forest grass, get really nice color during the growing season, nice fall color as well, and have something I just have to cut back once in the fall, then off we go for another spring. Now this is Aureola, which if you look at the blades, you can see those are really nicely striped if you like yellow, okay? So that's Aureola. If we don't want the striping and we want something bright, we do something like all gold. This is always going to have solid gold, lime green color to it, depending on how much sun we get. So I have both. They're both great choices, but this is one that you'll get some really nice color to brighten up a shade area. The other option, I didn't bring one in, but we do have green Hakanakloa as well. So maybe you're not a yellow gardener, you like just green. If you want the crisp green that turns really pretty red in the fall, burning bush red, we would want one called Benikaze. So just Benikaze with the K-A-Z-E. That would give me that same look, but green all through the season, just turning red in the fall, but same growth pattern. Okay. Now, if we keep going here, we've got a lot of grasses. Oat grass. So this is what we call blue oat grass or heliotrichum. That's a plant, again, native to hot, dry, very cold hardy. This is an evergreen typically in our climate, so I will get a little taller. The fescue I mentioned earlier, same color, but much shorter. If I had a fescue up here, it would be like this tall, just 6 inches in the pot there. The oat grass will give me a little bit more height, nice little seed head on it again, but I would look for this again for hot, dry areas. I like a touch of blue. And again, maybe a grouping of 3, 5 to make a nice presentation of a mass planting of blue oat grass, okay? Keep going here. I'm keeping myself on track by following my list. Now, if we look at blood grass, this is Emperata, or we call blood grass. Now you can see right now already in the summer, I've got beautiful red color. Got blood red blade tips on that right now. That's a really pretty color for the garden. This is one a little bit different, a little bit unique. This is a native plant to Japan. I'll warn you, you know, I'm always honest with plants. I love bloodgrass, but give this one some room to spread. This is another one that will naturalize and spread underground to pop up more blades. If we have wet soil and we water a little bit, this is one that feasibly could fill up and naturalize a pretty large area as it grows. This is a specific variety called Red Baron, which is a little slower, a little more clumpy. But even if I look at the surface of that container it's growing in, you can see stems coming out along the pot already. So, I mean, it's going to want to spread a little bit. Maybe not one that you'd use just, I want one little clump of grass here. You'd probably pick something a little different. Hey, I want a nice little swath, you know, or cover a nice area with grass, then maybe bloodgrass might be a real good choice for you, okay? If we look at this miscanthus, oh, yeah, let's do, I don't want to skip liriope or lirio. I didn't bring any of those in. We're running pretty low, but it is a plant getting more popular up here. Maybe look up some pictures on that online. We have some on our website as well. But if I want the grassy look, it's just a short, clumpy evergreen with grass. There's variegated ones as well, but this one would actually have a flower. This gets a little white or blue or purple. There's a number of different colors. A little flower stalk that comes up and opens up. So that would be something probably that looks more like a traditional bloom with the grassy-like foliage. Liriope, you can do it in some sun. Most people use it in a little bit more shade. And again, probably a plant that I would want to plant a bunch of. It makes a great little border plant along walkways. You can mass plant it in certain areas in the garden and have a nice presentation. Probably one might get a little bit lost when it comes to the world of liriope, or some people call it lily turf, okay? The next one's a big one, miscanthus. This is one, we've got quite a few here at the nursery, and I use this one a lot in my own garden in Everett here locally. You know, miscanthus is a plant, a grass that I could pick a lot of different cultivars. I would guess there's probably over 100 different distinct varieties out there these days. I can pick something a little shorter. I've got zebra grass in my yard that usually will reach 8 or 9 feet by the fall. And I can find something really anywhere in between those two heights, 2 to 3 feet, all the way to 8 or 9. I can have green foliage, I can have white striped foliage, I can have gold striped foliage. I can really pick whatever color I want. They all have impressive plumes in the fall, but to me, miscanthus, as a good rule, is a beautiful specimen grass. You want something big, you want something swaying the wind, you like the sound, you want the motion. Look at some miscanthus. That'll give you some really nice height and some cool color on a lot of varieties of those. So I brought up a few I'll show you, just to give you a feel. Let's say I like silver or white. You can see how bright that one is. This is one called Morning Light. So this would have long bands of silver on the green, a little bit thinner blade. This one's manageable. Maybe I get to about chest height on me, about 3 or 4 feet over the course of a season. All miscanthus is perennial. So we start from nothing in March and just keep going all year until we get to the fall or reach our height potential. So miscanthus Morning Light, give me a little silver, about 4 feet. I mentioned zebra grass is the one I have in my yard, up 8 or 9 feet. We have those as well. Zebra grass always has horizontal yellow variegation. If you can see the blades on that, very pretty. This is a variety of zebra grass. I think this is little zebra. So this is the dwarf version. Maybe I don't have room for 8 foot, Trevor. I'd like something a little smaller. So we would do something dwarf. There's a lot of great dwarf zebra grasses, gold bar, little zebra, on and on, where I can, again, get down there 2 to 3 feet or maybe 3 to 4 feet on some, a little bit more manageable. The newest one I've seen come out for dwarf miscanthus is one called Little Miss. Great little name for miscanthus, Little Miss miscanthus. So this is one, again, I'm going to get all kinds of great blade colors on all these in the fall, reds, oranges, a little bit even towards purple on some, but I'm going to have those plumes start to emerge here in September. Enjoy some flowers. I just don't want as big a plant. So this is one now I can get down there in that 3 foot neighborhood and have a little bit more manageable height to it. That's Little Miss. And here's a good example of a tall one. I mean, I put this on the ground. I'm 6'3". This is just a gallon plant, and I'm already up to my chinny chin chin. So I'm about 4 or 5 feet right now. But you can see, again, much thicker stems, really tall. And I got one here to show you, starting to plume out here for the fall. You know, I use these on my doorstep like some people use corn stalks, you know, for decorating in the fall. I'll cut a couple stems of tall miscanthus, bundle them together with some good brown twine, and I've got a cool little clump to put by the door to decorate for Halloween, Thanksgiving, and different holidays. So look at some of the tall ones. This is one called Second Wind, but there's a lot of great tall miscanthus varieties out there. We've probably got 5 or 6 besides this one. You can pick your color, pick your blade color, and your plumage in the fall. You know, pick the right one for your own taste, okay? Now, if we move on from miscanthus, the next one we would call Moline or Moor grass. So this is a really nice little colorful one. You can see short, clumpy habit, nice yellow on green. This is the variegated form. And this one's already in full seed plume here for fall. That's got a really pretty seed on it. So Moline is another one. To me, I'm going to try to plant 3 or 5 and make a little presentation along a border, a little mass planting in the garden where I can see it in mass versus maybe just one. Sometimes we'll get a little bit hidden. Another one we could use in pots as well. This one is perennial, so I don't have anything in the winter, but I have really nice color during the growing season and a really attractive seed head in the fall on a short little clumping grass. So that's Moline or Moor grass. See if we go, I think the next one's Nesella. Now this is bugging me in my industry lately, but we continue to rename things. So when I started out 30 years ago, this was in the family of Stipa. Some people still call it Stipa tenuissima, but it's its own little grass these days called Nesella. Now this has got a lot of different names, but a lot of people think this looks like blonde hair. It's a real fine, soft texture, short little grass, doesn't get big. This is another one I would say naturalized. You know, to be brutally honest, if I plant this in my landscape, this is one that will go to seed probably more than any of the other ones we talk about today. So if I want something that will naturalize and propagate itself, this is a great choice to kind of fill in areas. I think it looks beautiful along beaches and shorelines. Nice little bright color, turns bright yellow. It's always got that real fine little texture to it, but that's a real pretty grass. I'll get that one a little closer. Yeah, so that's the Nesella, or some people still call Stipa, okay? Now, if you look at a couple evergreens, look at a couple evergreen grasses. This is what we call Mondo Grass or Ophiopogon. You'll see there, that's a funny name to say. How about just call it Mondo Grass? So there's quite a few Mondo Grasses around, and just to show you a couple, this is green Mondo Grass. Look at that in a little tiny pot. Now this is a tiny little clumpy dark green. This is one I would probably never plant one. You know, in a container, great. You want a little grassy texture and mix in a pot, fine. In the landscape, I would like to see this planted again. Mass long rows along walkways, a big area of it to make a nice presentation. Mondo grass is really easy. It's evergreen. These are much better and more shade than sun. So we can use this as a nice little shady grass to fill up some area and stay evergreen. Black Mondo grass is the other one. And this is probably one of my favorite plants anyway. You won't find a lot of things in the yard that are jet black and are healthy black. This is nothing wrong with this one. You can see this gets a little lavender purple flower on it, gets a little metallic berry cluster after it blooms in the fall. But this is one that will spread. So I would consider this more ground cover, as much ground cover as I do grass. I've used this all over my landscape in the shade or mostly shade for a ground cover, weed suppression. This is one, I think I put in 3 of these little 4-inch plants years ago. I've probably got a 15 by 10 foot patch of this now that I can't even see the ground. The shrubs and things are out of it, but I've got that beautiful color contrast using Mondo grass planted underneath. So not super aggressive, not super fast growing. It's kind of slow and steady, but this is one, if I put one in, I'm gonna see another clump come up from the soil until it makes a nice patch and fills in like a thick ground cover. So that's black Mondo Grass, perfect in time for Halloween coming, right? If we go to the next one, we call Panicum or Switchgrass. Now, Panicum is one that we would find more in the prairie states. So again, hot, dry, really nice fall color on Panicums. Sometimes the taller ones will get a little floppy here in our wetter weather in the fall, but most of the newer ones are a little bit tighter, a little bit more upright. I brought one in just to show you, because these are starting to seed out too. So you can kind of see those plumes here starting out for the fall. And this is one just starting to show the first little bit of purple. If I show you the tag here, I'm hoping you can see the color. That's one that we will get really intense fire engine reds, oranges to purples for fall color. So most switchgrasses, this is one called Red Sunset. We have heavy metal. I can go on and on. We get a bunch of different switchgrasses in here at Sunnyside, but this is one where I would maybe pick a specific fall color and a height. So most switchgrasses, probably more in the 2 to 3 foot tall range. A couple of them a little bit taller towards 4 feet, but you can kind of pick a good switchgrass or panicum for, again, your own garden taste. This is one, again, I'll get a little bit of motion. I'll get some sound, a nice little clumping type perennial grass. I zip it off and start over again the next year. You'll see, to me, the reason I originally went into panicum in my own landscape is because if we look at that panicum in the summertime, to me, it has a little bit more blue-green color versus green-green color, if that makes sense. So if I look out in the landscape in June or July, I'm going to see some nice blue-green color versus, again, more green in my own yard. So a little bit of foliage color. And switchgrasses will probably start turning maybe a little bit earlier than miscanthus or some of the other upright perennial grasses we've looked at so far. So a little bit earlier on the fall color as well, okay? Now, Sedum, I brought in a whole bunch of them. So we're going to whip through and show you a few because these are in full plume right now and looking pretty sharp. Now, if I want to go short, on some Sedums, I'll show you a couple here. So now we're talking a grass that's clumping, that might get 2 feet tall, and getting my seed heads out right now. Some of these are even shorter. So this is a green one called Little Bunny. So that's a short little grass. You can see that's probably only 6-8 inches tall. I've got all my seeds already coming out here in August into September into October, but I've got a really attractive little border grass I can use in hot sun, drought tolerant, along sunny borders in the landscape. That'd be a great little choice. If you like green, we would do Little Bunny. Maybe you like a little bit of burgundy in there. This is one, fancy that, called Burgundy Bunny. So if you look at the blades on that, I've already got some reddish purple burgundy colors going with that same seed head and that same short growth habit. That's Burgundy Bunny. Or the new one this year, again, I like foliage color. This is one called Lumen Gold. So we could go all the way back towards spring. When I got these in the first load, a couple of them went home to my garden right away. But this is one that I would have a much more intense yellow lime color to it. And then again, I'm going to start getting those same seed heads here in the fall before I start to turn the intense red purple color for fall as well. Okay, so that's Lumen Gold. Now, if we want to get just a little taller on Sedum, this has got a really pretty full plume on it. You can see the color looking very pink. Yeah, this is one called Carly Rose. You can see just a little bit taller. Maybe I end up with something 2 foot tall of grass blades with my plumes on top, but that's got a really pretty pinkish hue on the grass blade here. Same thing, sun. I want drought tolerance. I want easy maintenance on a nice clumper. This is one that would be easy to grow, Carly Rose. Or maybe I want to get just a little taller yet. So now I'm up there in the 3 foot of grass with the plume on top. We have ones called Red Head. Can you see the size of those blooms coming out? I'm starting to see that reddish color. Again, green blade with a nice upright plume going on that right there. And we have another one here called red buttons. You can see that one's got a really attractive little seed head on it. Again, same clumpy green growth, intensifying with color in the fall, but I've got the plumes coming out here a little bit earlier in that August time that I'll get to enjoy here as we go through the fall months as well, okay? So again, both those, hot sun and good drought tolerance, if you get them established in the landscape, okay? The last grass we would call little bluestem. You can say that sounds like a mental disorder, but we've got schizocarium, right? Or you can say it 5 different ways. But this is one, again, to me, I'm going to have a little bit more blue-green color. You can see already all the purples and burgundies coming through. I'm starting to get my plumes coming out right now here in August. This is, I think, a really attractive specimen grass. The different little blue stems like this, very easy to grow. This is standing ovation, which is usually the one that most nurseries, including Sunnyside, carry here for fall, but great color on a really nice grass. If you're going to try something kind of new, this would be a fun one to do for sun. Again, maybe one specimen's adequate to show off, but maybe a group of 3 even would make a really nice presentation in the landscape, okay? So there's a bunch of grasses, and I'm going to just show you a couple perennials here. You know, we did perennial class back first weekend in August, and we kind of talked about a lot of summer perennials. You know, my favorite thing is bloom the whole season. You know, that's an easy one. Everybody wants the wonder perennial, something that's going to open up in color. If I deadhead it a little bit, it's going to continue to bloom all the way through fall till we get frost. So a lot of those plants that we talked about in August, if we're keeping up on them, keeping them watered, deadheading a little bit, we'll get repeat flowering on a lot of those all the way through fall. So simple plants like coneflowers. I'll grab a couple here. You know, coneflowers are still coming in fresh. I mean, look at those beautiful flowers just starting out. You know, this is one called Tiger Eye. This is Sweet Sandia with those 2-tone colors. If I deadhead those just a little bit as they're spent, I'll keep some flowers coming up on coneflower, and I'll pretty much have bloom on most of mine in my yard till we get to frost time, later October, which is a good one for fall. If we look at something like Hyssop or agastache, this is a great one for hummingbirds. They love it in my butterfly hummingbird garden at my place. Good sun, well-drained soil, very drought tolerant. We don't want to water this much, but I can find hyssop in a rainbow of colors and different heights, but this just continues to bloom and bloom and bloom all the way from June until we get frost in the fall. So another great summer perennial that I would also classify to get you some color through the fall months as well. Same with black-eyed Susan or Rudbeckia. You know, we just got some fresh ones in. I'll show you, they're not quite, oh, look at all the buds on there about to open. But, you know, that's our black-eyed Susan. You know, we can get that in tall, we can get it in short. This is the old-fashioned one called Goldstrom that does spread a little bit. It'll fill up some area, but we can do Little Gold Star, Early Bird, American Gold Rush. There's a lot of great varieties of Rudbeckia or black-eyed Susan that will give me that perfect yellow kind of false sunflower look and give me bloom from midsummer, again, all the way into the fall towards frost. Now, these are just arrived, the first mums of the year. Now, mums are kind of a funny one to me because I keep a lot of my mums. I'll plant them in containers in the fall and then take the plant out, pop it in the landscape. I can get any color I want with mums. They're great for sun. Most places see them, you know, in a seasonal or annual department. Mums can be perennials as long as I plant them good, mulch them in the winter, and cut them back properly. If I have good drainage, I'm going to probably have the majority of my mums come back another season and off we go. They don't bloom until the fall, so it's just going to be green all season. But the trick is with mums, you know, I want to plant like that. I mean, I would guess the number of flower buds on that one plant in a gallon is probably up near 300. I mean, that is ridiculous. You can see how many buds are on that. If I want my mom to look like this next year, I've got to go out and pinch it back, do a little bit of pruning as we go through the spring to early summer. Now I've got a full dense plant. If it's fed properly, now I will have the bud set like I would from a grower. So, I mean, you can look at that. It's just ridiculous how many flowers are on that. But don't forget about the mums for fall. Most all these Belgian type mums are going to be a perennial and are going to give me that flower power here as we go August, September into October. Okay. Same with asters. Now these are just starting to bloom. We can do asters in pinks and lavenders, blues, purples, lots of options. But similar to the mum, you know, I've got a dense compact plant that hangs out all year just to bloom here in fall, keep our pollinators happy. But it's one that I will get some great flower power to if I have great drainage. I mulch it a bit. This is something, again, I can have come back year after year and good sown with well-drained soil. So check out asters. Some kind of fun ones. This is Plumbago. Maybe some folks haven't tried this. There's Plumbago down in Southern California and tropical areas we cannot grow here. This is the hardy type Plumbago, the ceratostigma. But this is a plant, to me, that's very unique for fall. You can see I have cobalt blue flowers, which is not real common on a lot of plants in our area. And B, this is going to turn burning bush red while it's blooming. So I'm going to walk out in September in the fall and see a brilliant red foliage with those cobalt blue flowers on it. Very attractive plant for this time of the year. Something that's low. It's a great one along borders. Will spread a little bit, make nice clumps. But again, something I think would add a nice little touch in the fall. That's Plumbago. Now we get kind of a fun flower here. This is what we call toad lily. Now I'm going to try to get one up here and hold it so you can see how intricate that flower is. You can see the striping, the stamens. That's a really cool flower. Toad lily is a fun little perennial for woodland gardens for shade. It's something that, again, is a nice foliage through the growing season. But now that we're into the August, September timeframe, now is when I start to flower and do my thing for the season. So lots of good varieties of toad lily out there. I know a lot of these, if you're familiar in our area, are part of the Great Plant Picks program. A really easy perennial if you've got that morning sun, you know, woodland type garden area. But I want a nice little fall perennial. Toad lily would be a fun one to add to the collection. Okay. Now, if we get a last few here, I'm gonna do it on time. Oh, doing good. So anemone is one that's for fall. Now you can see if I put that up there, my flower buds are all set up and they're just about to start open here as we get into September. So anemone, you know, 20 years ago, I would say it was a kind of a taller, I hate to use the word invasive because it's not invasive, but it will naturalize pretty quickly. So if I put an anemone in, it's going to go to seed and I'm going to end up with a patch of anemones. They love shade. They love moisture, well-drained soil. Again, that woodland garden look. But you've got a lot of options in those kind of whites to pinks to dark pinks of anemones now that are a little bit shorter and maybe not quite, won't quite spread quite as much. So if you come down and look, you've got a great selection of fall anemones in right now. If you want to add a little flower power, anemone is a great way to go for a good fall one for, again, morning sun or the shady locations. A couple little different ones maybe you haven't seen quite yet. Let's do this one first. This is a really cool plant called Mucadenia. So this is a plant that came over from Asia. Can you see the red? This almost looks like it has a maple foliage that's already starting to turn scarlet on the tips. This is a Mucadenia they call crimson fans. Perfect name for that plant. This is a great little shade plant, again, that clumps, and I can make a nice patch of it by planting a few. one that will stay low. It does get a little whitish flower on it, which I'll be honest, for me, I could care less. I want this for the foliage. This is one I have in my shade garden for the fall. This is a plant that looks good all year, spring and summer, but I'm really going to intensify with the crimson color here as we get colder nights and have a very attractive little fall perennial. So that's, excuse me, that's Mucdenia Crimson Fans. If we look at another cool one Mr. Hinckley brought over from the east, this is a saxifrage. I have these in my shade garden too. This has got some fun foliage color. This will bloom here in September, October with bright little magenta flowers that'll pop out of the foliage. It melts to nothing in the winter, and then we see you again in spring. Another one we want for shade, a great little woodland garden plant. I have 5 planted on a little swath on a shady border in my yard underneath some rhododendrons. And it looks good all season with cool foliage, but it really shines in the fall when we start to bloom. So this is, again, a saxifrage. Look for either berry bright or pink elf. We can have pink bloom on the pink elf. Berry bright gets me a little bit more towards the magenta color, okay? And the last one that we always would have to bring up for a late summer or fall perennial class is sedum. You know, sedums are at the top of the list for drought tolerance, for full sun, slopes. They're awesome perennials for pollinators, especially as we get in here in the August, September, October timeframe. The majority of sedums have nice foliage during the growing season, but bloom in the fall. So don't forget sedums, especially hot, dry, and drought areas as an option for something that really shines all year but tends to bloom in the fall. Now, sedums, to me, we've got 3 ways to go. I can have ground cover. You know, I picked something like, this is a green one called John Creech. I want a flat green. I can see the flowers are coming out right now for fall, but I've got something low that will act like a ground cover and trail a little bit. Maybe I want just a little bit more height, maybe 6 or 8 inches, a little bit more out of the ground and not so flat. We love this Sun Sparkler series. So this is Lime Twister. You can see he's got some beautiful foliage color on there, but I can get this Sun Sparkler in the red, the dark burgundy, this variegated form. There's quite a few varieties in the Sun Sparkler series I think might catch your eye. If you want just a little bit more height, take a look at some of those. And then we have classic fall sedums like Autumn Joy. You know, we can have green like this, pink flower, variegated foliage, dark foliage. There's some really nice sedums that will give me, you know, foot and a half of height if I want something a little taller. But again, I'm going to have these clouds of flowers as we go through September, October. Bees will be buzzing around everywhere. This is one of the great ones for the bees here in the fall, okay? So there's a couple sedums for you. Now that's a lot of plants. I'm hoping I said every name 3 times and you got a chance to write them down. The classes are always recorded, so you can always go back and touch base. And again, the handout will help you as well. Kind of go back and say, well, I remember that one he talked about. That one caught my eye, kind of thing. We've got a great selection right now of all the plants I brought in, and certainly a lot more grasses I didn't bring in, or we'd be here for another hour. So certainly come down and take a look. Now, I'll tell you real quick with the classes, you know, we've always got a great discount for our customers here. The sun's out today. Come down and see us this weekend or certainly next week. You've got from today through next Friday, 20% off all the grasses. When you come down, simply tell the cashier that you were at the class here on Saturday. They hit a magic button on our register. That'll get you 20% off the regular price on all the grasses we have in stock. So very, very easy to do, okay? Real quick, next week, Labor Day weekend, I'm sure some will be traveling, but we don't take the weekend off here at Sunnyside. We got classes going again as we get into fall. So next Saturday, our seasonal manager, Holly, is a vegetable queen around here. She'll be teaching a class on fall vegetables and cool season crops. So we've got a great selection of fall veggies just started rolling in about a week ago. But Holly will go through with all her magical tips and teach you how to get the vegetable crop you want to do for fall. We've still got time to get a whole nother crop of vegetables planted that we can still pick and harvest and enjoy from our home landscape here as we get into the fall, okay? I'll be back in 2 weeks. Is a big class weekend for us here. So the weekend of 9/11, 9/12. So on 9/11, I'll be doing fall containers. We'll be in here live doing class. I'll be planting pots up, showing all kinds of really cool plants that will shine in the fall through the winter to add to our container gardens. If you're looking to revamp your summer containers and convert them into fall, I'll be bringing one of mine in to do during the class because I always do that twice a year, spring planting, and we'll do it again in fall. So we're looking sharp through the winter. And then Sunday, the 12th, is one of my favorite classes. I am the OCD lawn guy around here, and I love teaching people about growing their turf. So we'll talk about how to rejuvenate your lawn coming out of this summer. How do we get it looking fresh here going into winter? And we've got a healthy lawn going into 2022. A lot of it's organic. We're really trying to go as much go green organic around here at Sunnyside. So we'll be talking all about organic fertilizers and organic solutions for different issues in your lawn that will be pet safe, people safe, wildlife safe kind of deal, okay? So that's a lot of info. Ben's gonna activate his button here and we'll see if we got any questions today. Maybe Mr. Smith got them all.
Thanks, Trev. Couple questions here. Rabbits. It seems like a bunch of questions about rabbits. Is there any grasses that would be somewhat rabbit or deer resistant?
I'll have to look up. One thing I don't memorize these days is the list for the deer resistance, but there'll be a couple grasses I'm sure they won't touch. Rabbits is going to be a tough one. I mean, if they're coming in and doing a little nibbling on the tips of some of the grasses, I would always recommend trying a repellent. You can get something like Repel-Zol. We've got some stuff. You're not going to kill the rabbit. You're not going to maim the rabbit, but he'll come in and get a little irritation on the nose, the eyes, the mouth, and hopefully head for the neighbors and go eat their grasses instead. So try a repellent. Same answer for the deer. But it's easy to jump online these days. Just type in Pacific Northwest, Western Washington, deer-resistant plants, rabbit-resistant plants. You'll punch up with some great websites and lists that you can scan through and find some things maybe that catch your eye that they would be a little less inclined to touch.
We've got several people tuning in from the east side of the state. Is there any grasses in particular you recommend over across the Cascades there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are super hardy, and depending on where you're at in Eastern Washington, having a place in Cle for a lot of years, personally, a lot of fescue, a lot of the Oat Grass is one, the Moor Grass, Deschampsia. There's quite a few that we showed today. We didn't really talk about zone hardiness, but you know, there's a lot of these that'll get down there into the 10, 20, even 30 below zero range. So look, as you look at your list there, you know, again, you can punch them on the computer real quick, look at that zone number, see where you're located in Eastern Washington, and you can certainly find some great options for over there.
We've got a couple questions more of the perennials, the fall bloomers, as far as them getting super leggy through the season and starting to flop out this time of year, the autumn joy.
Yep.
Can they cut them back earlier or any specific staking techniques?
Well, we could always use, you know, a grow ring or something to support the sedum. I'll be honest, I see sedums flopping here and there in yards driving around, and typically this goes back to June. I think they probably get too much water. If you're watering the garden a lot in the summer months, you're going to get more growth naturally. And then as we get towards fall and we want things to harden off, we're going to flop a little bit more if we're top heavy. But, you know, autumn joy, there's a lot of upright sedums. And yes, I see them kind of flop a little bit, but we can always get, you know, a grow ring, a simple stake to kind of support them a little bit might help.
Next one here about the toad lilies. Should they be deadheaded?
Well, toad lily blooms so late. I mean, you could always deadhead anything. The toad lily is probably not going to repeat flower like some of the stuff that we talked about coming out of summer. because it's all about fall with the toad lily. Those are only going to really bloom in the fall. Certainly, if you want to keep it a little tidier, some spent blossoms getting picked off is fine, but I don't think you're going to encourage more stocks to come up if that's what you're talking.
It sounds like most of these grasses would do okay in containers. Would any of them survive as an indoor plant?
That's a great question, actually. You've got other options. If you wanted kind of a grassy texture indoors, I would, there's some house plants you can get grassy texture from that would belong inside. I wouldn't keep any of this inside year round. All this stuff needs the seasons to go through the growth cycle. So I wouldn't recommend doing any of this indoors, but I think if you went, you know, we got a pretty good houseplant shop here, come down, we could show you some grassy, you know, kind of houseplants that would give you that texture that would thrive year round inside.
Next one's about black Mondo grass. Someone's got some black Mondo. It's getting about 6 hours of sunlight.
Yep.
And he's trying to keep it a little darker in color. Is there anything he can do to the soil, or does it need more shade?
I mean, again, Mondo grass doesn't need to be in deep dark shade. You know, my patch I mentioned in class is both sides of a huge golden cypress is kind of the specimen in the middle of that garden I have. This side gets 0 direct sun. This side definitely gets 6 hours. I've got the same dark black color. I do water that a little bit in the summertime. I'm not a huge watering guy in the summer, but I do water that garden. I would say probably a little extra water would keep it a little fresher, maybe help it be darker.
That's all we have here in the Q&A. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And if anyone has any questions, you can always shoot us an email.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining us. Hopefully you get out and do some work in the yard today. Enjoy the sunshine up here. And we will see you next Saturday with Miss Holly for fall vegetables. All right, enjoy the day.